Hello everyone, and welcome back to Native Flow English. I'm Sarah, your host, and today, we are absolutely diving deep into the exact kind of material. Thousands of advanced learners globally have been requesting an extended, natural, real-life English listening experience meticulously crafted for C2 fluency. If you've successfully reached this stage, first and foremost, congratulations are in order. You have conquered a significant linguistic mountain that the majority of people never even attempt. Yet, you are listening because you aspire to attain something richer, greater nuance, a more authentic rhythm, superior control, and crucially, an innate sense of ease and comfort when using English. I assure you, that final leap from proficient English to genuinely effortless English is completely attainable. But achieving that requires the specific kind of input we're providing today. Authentic, unscripted style conversations, genuinely natural expressions, highly common everyday phrasing, and those subtle communicative details that native speakers employ entirely without conscious thought. And joining me today is a person who understands precisely how to illuminate these fine points. A fellow educator, a self-proclaimed pronunciation enthusiast, and someone who dedicates an extensive amount of time to dissecting how authentic communication actually happens. Welcome to the show. Thank you. It's genuinely wonderful to be here. I particularly enjoy producing these kinds of episodes because C2 learners occupy such a fascinating developmental stage. They can comprehend nearly everything, yet they frequently report the same observation: I still haven't achieved complete naturalness. Or perhaps, I sometimes hesitate because the phrasing doesn't sound quite right to me. Or, my absolute favorite feedback: I understand all the words, but my own speech doesn't quite match the native flow I hear. Exactly. And that, in essence, is the foundational purpose of today's episode: to successfully close that crucial, final 10% gap in your mastery. Once learners reach the C2 threshold, success is no longer defined by mastering basic grammar rules or diligently memorizing structured vocabulary lists, and it certainly isn't about grinding through repetitive, dull drills. Instead, it involves deep exposure to authentic linguistic patterns, the underlying rhythm, the natural flow, the precise tone, and those minute emotional shifts skillfully embedded within commonplace, daily expressions. Right. And before we proceed, I want to reiterate a key philosophy I constantly share with my advanced students. English proficiency at the apex is not measured by perfection. It is measured by naturalness. It requires selecting phrases that flawlessly match the specific social context. It's about projecting composure, confidence, and spontaneity, never sounding like you are reading from a script. The only reliable method for developing this skill is by immersing yourself in genuine conversational English, which is precisely what we are providing over these next 100 minutes. So, let's begin with an idea that is both simple and globally relevant: the fundamental concepts of comfort and confidence in your English usage. Many C2 learners report feeling strong intellectual confidence. They fully grasp the grammar and possess extensive vocabulary, but they lack emotional confidence. Consequently, they often second-guess their choices while speaking, worried about projecting an image that is overly formal, excessively stiff, or obviously textbook-derived. I encounter this frustration constantly. A student will say, "I speak proficiently, but I don't feel like my authentic self when I use English." That is an extremely important observation. You want your linguistic persona in English to perfectly mirror your genuine personality, to be relaxed, expressive, humorous, thoughtful, and curious. Therefore, Here is a small, valuable mindset adjustment. Instead of prioritizing the question, how can I flawlessly avoid errors? Shift your focus to, how can I articulate my thoughts with greater naturalness? Exactly. And the hallmark of natural English frequently lies in minor, everyday conversational phrases, the very ones often omitted from standard textbooks. Think of expressions such as, I get what you mean, I see where you're coming from. That caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that. That's a good call. Or, let me think this through. These are not specialized, fancy phrases, nor are they obscure dictionary idioms. They simply represent the organic language that native speakers deploy incessantly, whether they are in a professional setting, socializing with friends, or engaging in simple casual chat. Absolutely. As we navigate today through a diverse range of topics covering daily life, professional communication, cultural observations, decision-making, emotions, work, relationships, and personal preferences, you will repeatedly hear these specific types of phrases integrated naturally within the conversational context. That is the true benefit of this format. Your brain absorbs the linguistic patterns organically, without any need for forced memorization. And since we touched upon daily life, let's initiate our discussion with a universal topic, the routines we establish and the habits we attempt to maintain. Discussing routines frequently unlocks highly natural English phrasing. Yes, that's a perfect starting point. Consider how commonly people express themselves using lines like, I've been trying to get into a better morning routine. I'm not naturally a morning person, but I'm actively working on it. I've been meaning to start exercising again. Or, I keep promising myself I'll go to bed earlier, but clearly, here we are. These are lines that circulate universally in the office, at coffee shops, in fitness centers, and during relaxed chats. They tap into a shared human experience, the continuous effort to improve aspects of life, often with mixed results. The manner in which native speakers discuss these struggles is typically casual, self-aware, and injected with a gentle humor. Right, nobody would ever genuinely say, I intend to rigorously restructure my morning routine for optimal improved productivity. That kind of phrasing is entirely robotic. Instead, they opt for human expressions like, I'm trying to get my life together. I'm slowly getting back on track. Or, I'm doing my best, but it's a work in progress. That last one, it's a work in progress, is used with incredible frequency across every domain, including health, careers, personal objectives, and even relationships. Exactly. And these are the specific phrases that lend genuine authenticity to your English, making it sound neither academic nor overly formal, but simply real. Therefore, here is our strategy for this episode. We will extensively explore these natural expressions within organic conversation. We will demonstrate how native speakers actively deploy them, and you will encounter them repeatedly, not through rote memorization, but through continuous, relaxed, natural exposure. Right. And please remember, the central objective today is not achieving perfect comprehension of every solitary word. The goal is the deep absorption of linguistic patterns, the manner in which thoughts naturally flow, how ideas seamlessly connect, and the precise inflection of tone based on the situation. With that context established, let's gently transition into our first substantial conversation segment, focusing on daily routines, specific morning habits, and the minor rituals that fundamentally shape our day. Frankly, how a person chooses to begin their day often reveals a tremendous amount about their character. So, let's discuss mornings, not in an overly dramatic fashion, but in the practical, real-life, everyday sense. Every individual maintains a highly distinct relationship with the start of the day. Some people instantly wake up primed and ready to conquer the world, while others emerge from sleep and immediately begin intense internal negotiations about whether or not to actually get out of bed. Absolutely. It's quite amusing that people genuinely love discussing their morning rituals, even those who might not strictly adhere to one. You'll frequently hear observations like, "I'm trying to be significantly more consistent. Some days I'm totally on top of things. Other days, not so much." Or, "I genuinely wish I were one of those organized early riser people." Exactly. And specific phrases like, "on top of things, not so much," or "early riser people" are decidedly not found in typical language textbooks. They are precisely the kind of relaxed, natural conversational components you hear constantly in daily life. Let's quickly paint a realistic scenario. Imagine you are grabbing coffee with a colleague before starting the workday. You ask how their morning progressed, and you receive a reply such as, "Well, I actually managed to wake up on time, which I already consider a major win, but then I got completely distracted by scrolling on my phone, and suddenly, a full half hour had vanished." Every native speaker intimately understands that phenomenon, how time can simply evaporate without warning. Exactly. Alternatively, you might hear someone comment, "I was having a great start, and then I suddenly recalled that I forgot to run the dishwasher last night, so now my whole morning just feels off." That specific phrase, "my whole morning feels off," is highly idiomatic. It conveys that something feels slightly wrong or out of sync, even if the actual incident was trivial. This demonstrates how profoundly language is constructed around communicating these subtle emotional states. People almost never state, "My morning was functionally inefficient due to unexpected operational circumstances." Instead, they say, "It just threw me off. I completely lost my rhythm. I got sidetracked." Or "I was all over the place." These are remarkably ubiquitous expressions that advanced learners must absorb by hearing them utilized in genuine, practical contexts. You know what's equally common in conversation? Discussions surrounding the attempt to establish healthier habits. You hear people say things like, "I'm genuinely trying to drink more water. I'm attempting to cut back significantly on coffee, but honestly, it's not going smoothly." Or, "I promised myself I would go for a run this morning. Spoiler alert, I absolutely did not." Yes, the use of spoiler alert in that context is highly natural and deeply conversational. It injects a sense of playfulness. Understanding this kind of usage is integral to achieving a native sound it's learning, where humor surfaces in ordinary communication. Right. The majority of conversational humor doesn't rely on formal jokes. It relies heavily on tone, timing, and self-awareness. It's subtle lines like, "I had every firm intention of being productive today, and then reality truly hit. I blinked, and somehow it was already lunchtime." Or, "Today has already completely gotten away from me." These specific expressions constitute genuine everyday English gold for students pursuing C2 mastery. You know what I find particularly interesting? When we engage in conversations about daily routines, we are doing more than just discussing schedules. We are discussing personal identity. People routinely define themselves through their habits. "I'm a slow starter," "I'm a classic night owl," or "I'm simply not fully functional until I've had my first cup of coffee." While these statements appear simple, they are incredibly dense with sophisticated natural phrasing. Exactly. If your goal is to achieve a native sound, one of the most effective techniques is observing how people describe their own behaviors. It's seldom direct. It's usually playful, or relies on metaphors. For instance, I only function at about 40% capacity in the morning. I'm just not built for early mornings. Or, my brain genuinely takes a while to boot up. These expressions are instantly recognizable to native speakers. I particularly enjoy that last one, boot up. It's a playful, enjoyable way to draw a comparison between the human brain and a computer starting its system. Metaphors of that sort permeate the English language, particularly within casual dialogue. Exactly. They inject vitality and dynamism into the language. Okay, let's smoothly pivot the conversation slightly. Having covered mornings and routines, we should transition to a closely linked subject: motivation. The phrasing used when discussing motivation in English tends to be highly specific and notably informal. So true. You will almost never hear someone state, "My motivation levels are observed to fluctuate significantly dependent on external variables." Instead, the language is far more human. "I'm really trying to get my act together. I'm just not as motivated as I'd ideally like to be. I'm slowly working on it." Or, "I can't seem to get into the right headspace." These common lines convey profound emotion, not merely factual data. Exactly. And here is a phrase that absolutely every English learner must integrate into their speech because of its ubiquity. "I'm doing my best." It is deceptively simple, yet immensely powerful and extraordinarily flexible. It applies equally well across professional responsibilities, health goals, daily habits, relationships, or any personal endeavor. Another truly universal expression is, "I'm trying to find my balance." This specific phrase is highly adaptable, conveying myriad meanings depending entirely on the speaker's tone and the conversational context. Yes, it rarely refers to physical equilibrium. It signifies emotional or mental stability, the effort to locate a healthy, sustainable rhythm amongst the countless things you are currently juggling in life. Speaking of which, juggling is yet another perfect everyday expression. People commonly state, "I'm juggling a lot right now," "I've definitely got a lot on my plate," or "I'm just trying to keep everything together." Utilizing these expressions helps you project sensitivity, humanity, and relatability, which is the ultimate marker of advanced English, not sounding technically perfect, but sounding genuinely real. Exactly. And the most effective method for developing this authentic sound is through consistent exposure to natural conversation, avoiding scripted textbook dialogues or artificially constructed practice scenarios, and instead focusing on the true rhythm of human speech, when people are simply being themselves. Okay, let's build directly on that foundation and move into a slightly deeper subject: how people discuss stress and the strategies they use to manage it. This is another universal human topic, and the common English expressions associated with stress management are tremendously valuable for every advanced learner. Yes, that's an excellent direction. Stress impacts everyone, whether it's work stress, general life stress, emotional stress, or even social pressure. The language used to describe it reveals an abundance of natural phrasing. Right. You will frequently hear people say, "I've been feeling a little overwhelmed." "I'm stretched pretty thin right now." "I'm actively trying not to burn out." Or, "It's been a genuinely hectic week." Notice that these expressions are not dramatic. They are just part of daily vernacular. These phrases are so widespread that simply integrating them naturally into your own speech instantly elevates your English proficiency to a significantly more native-like standard. Exactly. And we'll explore this even further: how people articulate emotions, pressure, relationships, and social interactions, because these are the precise areas where advanced English truly excels. But for the moment, let's conclude our morning routine discussion, carry these natural phrasing patterns forward, and move toward the next theme: how people describe pressure, stress, and emotional balance in daily English. Trust me, the vocabulary in this realm is pure gold, so let's ease into a topic almost universally shared: dealing with stress, pressure, mental load, or whatever term you prefer. What's noteworthy is that native speakers rarely discuss stress in a formal or overly dramatic fashion. It is typically conveyed subtly, often understated, and maintained at a highly conversational level. Exactly. And you will find people using expressions like, "I've got a lot going on right now," "I'm feeling slightly overwhelmed," "I'm running on low battery this week," or "I'm hanging in there, but it's a lot." Now, observe carefully how none of these sentences explicitly use the word stress, yet the meaning is perfectly clear, correct, and that distinction is precisely why these phrases are so vital for C2 learners. Advanced English is less about knowing complicated, obscure vocabulary, and far more about sounding genuinely human, sounding like a person navigating the real world, rather than someone taking a standardized language examination. For instance, one of the most quintessential native expressions is, "I'm trying to keep my head above water." It simply communicates that you are managing, coping successfully, and avoiding being completely drowned by responsibilities. You will encounter this expression absolutely everywhere in professional settings, family discussions, and casual chats with friends. And occasionally, stress is conveyed using slightly humorous descriptions. You might hear someone comment, "I'm one minor inconvenience away from completely losing it," "I'm truly at capacity," or "my brain has entirely left the chat." Yes, that final expression, "my brain has left the chat," is an internet-influenced phrase that has rapidly become extremely common. It's lighthearted, yet it successfully communicates exhaustion in a highly relatable manner. And what's also fascinating is how people often employ metaphors to delineate their emotional limits. Consider phrases like, "I'm burned out," "I'm completely drained," "I'm fried," "I've hit a wall," or "my brain is fried." These are not technical terms. They are derived from real-life experiences and significantly assist in grasping the emotional resonance of a dialogue. Right. And one phrase I hear repeated endlessly is, "I'm doing my best to stay grounded." This particular statement signifies that you are trying to remain calm, stable, and centered, even when your life circumstances feel utterly chaotic. Let's offer our listeners a quick, natural conversational snippet, something you might overhear between two colleagues or friends. "Hey, are you doing okay? You seem a little off lately." "Yeah, I'm all right. Just juggling far too much at the moment. Anything I can assist with?" "Not really. But I appreciate the thought. I just seriously need to catch my breath." Now, that brief exchange is saturated with native expressions: "a little off," "juggling too much," and "catch my breath." These phrases skillfully carry emotional meaning without resorting to being dramatic. Exactly. And another tremendously common expression is, "I just need a minute." This can literally mean 60 seconds, or it can be shorthand for, "I need some dedicated time to calm down." Here, the tone is arguably more important than the literal words themselves. So, let's delve a little deeper into the specific language people use when attempting to reset, recover their focus, or actively manage stress. You'll frequently hear, "I'm trying to slow down," I need to clear my head, I'm taking things one day at a time, or I'm trying hard not to overthink everything. And that particular phrase, one day at a time, is truly universal. It is utilized in virtually every major English-speaking country. Right. And it applies to more than just stress. It's used for anything that feels overwhelming, a massive project, a new job role, or complex new responsibilities. It functions as a comforting, realistic way to acknowledge progress without applying undue pressure. Another extremely common and essential expression is, I'm giving myself some grace. This essentially means you are choosing to be gentle and patient with yourself, deliberately not setting expectations for absolute perfection. Yes. And that is an observation that many advanced learners genuinely need to internalize. They sometimes impose excessive pressure on themselves to speak flawlessly. However, real, authentic English is inherently filled with minor errors, natural pauses, moments of hesitation, and self-corrections, even when spoken by native speakers. Exactly. That reality underscores why listening to extended, human conversations is so critical. It helps you recognize that English is not a performance art. It is fundamentally a tool for communication. Allow me to add one more expression that native speakers rely on constantly. I'm trying to find my rhythm again. This is employed when someone feels unbalanced or out of sync and is attempting to regain a sense of personal stability. And that naturally connects to another common everyday topic: energy and motivation. People genuinely enjoy discussing their energy levels, typically through self-aware or humorous language. You hear lines like, I'm running on fumes. I have absolutely zero energy left. I'm completely wiped out. I'm absolutely done for the day. Or, I hit my limit hours ago. These expressions effectively communicate profound exhaustion, but in a light-hearted, friendly manner. Right, and here is a critical nuance every advanced learner needs to grasp: native speakers frequently utilize exaggeration to make strong emotions relatable yet still casual. For example, I'm exhausted, I'm dead tired, or I could sleep for a week. None of these are meant literally, but everyone instantly understands the precise depth of meaning being conveyed. Exactly. And sometimes the exaggeration is even more humorous and dramatic. My social battery is at 1%, I'm emotionally unavailable until I get food. Or, if I don't manage to sleep soon, I'll start malfunctioning. This is the kind of vibrant, real-world English that consistently appears in actual conversations at work, in educational settings, among friends, and in group messaging chats. And speaking of professional environments, let's pivot our discussion to how people talk about workload, personal responsibilities, and workplace stress. This is an area where advanced learners often face difficulty. They typically know the formal corporate vocabulary, but lack the common, everyday expressions. Exactly. While most learners can accurately state, I have numerous tasks to complete, native speakers usually communicate this by saying, I'm completely swamped, I'm buried in work, I've got deadlines piling up, I'm trying desperately to stay on top of everything, or I've got way too much on my plate. These expressions are natural, casual, and dominate the language used in modern workplaces. Right, and another interesting linguistic trend is how people discuss productivity. The language is always emotive, never technical. You would never hear someone declare, my productivity levels were suboptimal today. They say instead, I couldn't focus. I kept getting easily distracted. I wasn't feeling it today. My brain absolutely refused to cooperate. Or I got nothing done. Yes, That last one is one of the most consistently common phrases you'll encounter in offices. Okay, let's maintain this trajectory and move into an even more nuanced topic: how people discuss boundaries and personal space in everyday English. These phrases are extremely common across the US, UK, Canada, Australia, essentially every major English-speaking country. The expressions used when discussing boundaries are some of the most beneficial for C2 learners because they demonstrate both emotional intelligence and social awareness. Absolutely. We will fully delve into that next. But before we transition completely, let's summarize the critical takeaway from this current segment. Native speakers communicate stress using metaphors, significant understatement, light humor, and rich emotional nuance, not stiff, formal language. If you begin adopting these patterns yourself, you will instantaneously sound far more natural. Alright, let's now proceed into boundaries, communication, and emotional space, another area where truly advanced English proficiency vividly shines. So, let's discuss something many individuals struggle with: boundaries, effective communication, and emotional space. These are topics native speakers engage with constantly, particularly within modern professional environments, friendships, romantic relationships, and even casual conversations. The language employed here is remarkably natural, incredibly common, and immensely practical for anyone aiming for the C2 level. Absolutely. It's quite ironic that most learners don't encounter this essential language in school curricula. You learn how to talk about your occupation, your hobbies, and perhaps your family, but rarely how to articulate "I need space," or "I'm not comfortable with that," or "that really doesn't work for me." And yet, these are the exact expressions you hear constantly in real life. Right. And establishing boundaries doesn't necessitate drama. They can be entirely normal aspects of interaction. For example, here are some everyday native phrases you will hear continually. I need some time to myself. I'm not in the right headspace for that right now. I appreciate the offer, but I think I'm going to pass. That feels like a bit too much for me. And the highly contemporary phrase, I'm trying to protect my peace. That last example, protect my peace, is an extremely modern and widely used phrase, especially in younger demographics. It fundamentally means actively maintaining a calm and stable emotional state. And I find the gentle, soft nature of these boundary expressions quite interesting. Native speakers almost never say something stiff like, I do not wish to engage in that activity. Instead, they use softer statements. That's not really my thing. I'm going to sit this one out. I think I'll skip this time. Or the versatile phrase, that doesn't work for me. Yes, that doesn't work for me is arguably one of the most versatile and polite boundary phrases available in English. You can apply it to scheduling conflicts, demanding work tasks, planned social events, or anything else that doesn't align with your current needs or priorities. Let's consider a realistic conversational example. Hey, we're all planning to head out after work. Are you in? I'd genuinely love to, but I really need to recharge tonight. Totally understand. Maybe next time. Now, analyze the language I need to recharge. This means needing rest, whether physical, emotional, or social rest. Native speakers use this constantly. Exactly. And here's another very common one: I need a little breathing room. This serves as a very gentle, subtle way of indicating a need for space, whether that space is literal or purely emotional. Another expression you'll hear frequently: I'm setting some boundaries for myself. This signals an intentional effort toward healthier habits, improved calm, or greater balance, and is a way of proactively informing others. Now, let's turn our attention to communication, specifically how to be honest while still maintaining kindness. This is a massive component of real-life English that advanced learners must master. Native speakers utilize crucial softening phrases, language that intentionally minimizes the harshness of the central message. For example, I might be wrong, but from what I can tell, I'm not sure exactly how to put this. But can I be honest with you for a second? Or here's how I'm seeing it. These expressions powerfully demonstrate emotional intelligence and expertly create the necessary space for sincere, honest dialogue. Right. And here is another critically important phrase that made me feel a bit uncomfortable. This provides a direct, yet highly respectful, way to articulate one's feelings. And it is extremely common in both professional and personal contexts. And you'll also hear, "I'd prefer if we didn't go in that direction. I'm not sure that tone is particularly helpful right now," or "I need a minute to process that." Again, these sophisticated expressions showcase emotional awareness, sensitivity, and refined social understanding. Exactly. And here is something fundamental. Native speakers rely heavily on tone and phrasing, not just vocabulary, to convey subtle nuance. This is precisely why advanced learners benefit so immensely from extended listening. Like this, you begin to innately understand how meaning subtly shifts depending on the rhythm, the softness, and the strategic placement of pauses. Now, let's switch into a related, but this marks a slightly less formal but equally important domain: the vocabulary surrounding social energy and personal preferences. In contemporary English-speaking societies, conversations are constantly revolving around the need for personal space, avoiding large or crowded gatherings, proactively managing one's energy levels, and finding the essential balance between social engagement and necessary rest. You often hear phrases like, "My social battery is running low," or "I'm not really in a social mood today." Others might say, "I love hanging out, but I definitely need downtime afterward." Or "I get overwhelmed in big groups. I'm much more of a small group person." Crucially, these statements are not regarded as confessions of inadequacy or personal weaknesses. They are simply standard, accepted descriptions of personal needs and preferences. Observe how intrinsically natural these expressions feel. They are instantly relatable, gentle, and familiar. They avoid sounding dramatic or overly formal. They are the authentic language of real people navigating real life. Another incredibly common expression is, "I'm trying to find the right balance." While we've discussed balance generally, here it refers explicitly to the ongoing management of one's social requirements. People employ this phrase constantly. Consider this realistic mini-dialogue. "You coming to the party tonight? I think I'm going to stay home. I've had a really long week." "No worries. Rest up." "Yeah, I just need a quiet night." This exchange is exceedingly simple, profoundly natural, and rich with authentic native phrasing. Now, let's delve deeper. The concepts of boundaries and emotional space are equally critical in intimate relationships and friendships. People frequently articulate their needs with statements such as, "I need to take a step back," or "I'm not in the best place emotionally right now." Further examples include, "I need to set healthier limits," "I care deeply, but I also need some space," or "I simply don't have the capacity for this right now." These expressions are effective because they are polite, yet authentic. They allow for clear communication without resorting to harshness. This ability is paramount for advanced learners. If you can articulately express emotional nuance in English, you have achieved more than basic fluency. You have achieved social fluency. We will now shift focus to a related domain, the language people use to describe their preferences, decisions, and personal choices. This area is similarly saturated with natural, everyday language, particularly in expressions related to liking or disliking things, the process of selection, hesitation, or ultimately changing one's mind. We will explore this next, as the vocabulary surrounding personal decisions is exceptionally rich and ingrained in daily life. But before we transition, remember this key takeaway: truly advanced English resides in the soft language, the nuanced phrases that convey emotion, set boundaries, reveal preferences, signal hesitation, establish tone, and build connection. Mastering this unlocks an entirely new dimension of authentic fluency. All right, let's transition into how native speakers express preferences, navigate decisions, and discuss personal tastes. These are some of the most beneficial everyday expressions for the C2 level. We are tackling a subject every native speaker engages with constantly: preferences and decision-making. This is a genuine gold mine of natural English, as people communicate their likes, dislikes, uncertainties, hesitations, and personal tastes dozens of times throughout the day. Crucially, the manner in which they communicate this is almost never direct or formal. Indeed, when a native speaker is asked about their preference, the answer is seldom a simple yes or no. Instead, you receive nuanced phrases that subtly reveal personality, confidence, indecision, politeness, or, often, a combination of these traits. For instance, I'm not picky, but I do have preferences. I'm flexible, whatever works for you. I'm not crazy about that idea. I could go either way. I'm leaning toward this one. These types of expressions feel utterly natural and drive conversational flow. They constitute the standard language of daily choices, determining what to eat, where to meet, whether to commit to a plan, or how one truly feels about an available option. One of the most frequently heard expressions in English is, "I'm not sure yet. I'm still thinking it through." This phrase is gentle, honest, and pervasive. Another staple you hear constantly is, "Let me sleep on it," meaning, I need to defer my decision until tomorrow, or I need to process this after resting. And here is a highly idiomatic expression concerning hesitation: "I'm on the fence." This signifies that you are undecided, situated perfectly in the middle. The beauty of this idiom is its universality. You can apply it to significant professional decisions, complex personal matters, or even simple choices like what food to order. Precisely. Let's now examine how native speakers communicate strong preferences without being overly direct or forceful. Positive examples include, "I'm really into this. I'm a huge fan of that. That's totally my thing." In contrast, expressing disinterest uses phrases like, "That doesn't really do it for me," or "I'm not big on that." All of these are exceptionally common and maintain a friendly, non-aggressive tone. Think about the sheer number of alternative ways English offers to convey "I don't like this" without using those stark words. We have "I'm not big on it," "It's not really my vibe," "It's not my cup of tea," "I'm not sold on it," "It's not quite what I'm looking for." These are hallmark examples of soft, polite, and socially aware opinion delivery. Another favorite expression is, "It's growing on me," which means you initially disliked something, but are now beginning to appreciate it. Exactly. The logical opposite is, "I'm over it." signifying that you previously enjoyed something but no longer do. Let's illustrate these types of expressions in a natural mini dialogue. Do you want to watch that new show tonight? I'm on the fence. I'm not sure if it's my vibe. We could just try one episode and see how it goes. Yeah, why not? Maybe it'll grow on me. Every single line in this brief exchange is precisely the kind of language used by real people daily. Now, let's transition into another fundamental component of natural English: the process of making plans. In English-speaking cultures, plans are rarely confirmed instantly. The process almost always involves negotiation, flexibility, a degree of hesitation, and the extensive use of softening language. Precisely, here are some of the most critical expressions related to planning. Let's play it by ear. Let's see how the day goes. I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know closer to the time. I'm not sure yet. I might have something. These expressions are absolutely essential for achieving a natural cadence when discussing future arrangements. Furthermore, the affirming phrase you will hear constantly is, "Sounds good to me." It is friendly, simple, and ubiquitous. Indeed. And here is a crucial insight for every C2 learner: native speakers frequently respond indirectly when they are not fully committed to an event or suggestion. Examples include maybe, we'll see, I'll think about it, I'll see how I feel, let me check my schedule. While these phrases often serve as a soft rejection, meaning probably not, they function as polite ways to keep the conversational door open and maintain rapport. Exactly. And a very popular modern English expression has emerged. I'm trying to be more intentional with my time. This signifies that the speaker is attempting to select activities carefully and mindfully, rather than automatically agreeing to every request. Correct. And this concept ties directly to another supremely common phrase: I'm trying to prioritize rest. This means the person is deliberately choosing relaxation and self-care above immediate social invitations. Let's illustrate this tendency with a natural dialogue. Want to join us for dinner? Thanks, that's really nice of you, but I think I'm staying in tonight. I'm trying to slow down a bit. No worries at all. Take care of yourself. Observe the resulting tone. It is warm, polite, and thoroughly relaxed. There is zero drama or perceptible tension. Now, let's introduce a distinct yet connected common topic in everyday English: personal tastes and lifestyle choices. People thoroughly enjoy discussing their favorite foods, activities, hobbies, and routines. Yet, they seldom describe them using strict or formal language. Instead, you hear highly engaged phrases such as, "I'm really into cooking lately. I've been getting back into reading. I'm trying to get more active. I got hooked on that series. I'm obsessed with this new cafe." All these examples are highly conversational and resonate with real life. Conversely, when people express dislike, the language remains characteristically casual. They might say, "I tried it, but it wasn't for me. I'm not feeling it. I couldn't get into it. It didn't click with me." These expressions gently communicate a personal preference while skillfully avoiding shutting down the possibility of further discussion. Let's expand into a further advanced nuance, expressing cognitive complexity, uncertainty, or the act of changing one's mind. Native speakers often employ expressions like, "I'm torn. I keep going back and forth. I change my mind. I talk myself out of it. I talk myself into it. It seemed like a good idea at the time." These are deeply human statements, rich with personality and genuine emotion. Precisely. and they critically help the listener understand your internal thought process, which constitutes a major element of seamless, natural communication. Now, before we transition into the next major topic, relationships, connection, and social dynamics, let's quickly summarize. Native speakers seldom provide simple, direct, yes or no answers. They convey preferences softly, with emotional honesty, through indirect means, and often playfully. Everyday English is fundamentally characterized by metaphor, deliberate hesitation, humor, and nuance. Mastering the language of decisions and preferences is paramount to achieving C2 level authenticity. The following section will reveal some of the most compelling and rich natural language in English. Specifically, how people discuss friendships, connections, social interactions, misunderstandings, and communication. This domain is critical for advanced fluency, and we will dive into it immediately. All right, let's move into one of the most expressive and rewarding areas of natural English: relationships, connection, and social dynamics. This is the domain where native speakers deploy their most nuanced, expressive, and emotionally intelligent language. The sort of vocabulary that is seldom highlighted in academic textbooks, but surfaces constantly in genuine daily life. Exactly. The universal appeal of this topic makes it inherently beautiful. Everyone has friendships, family ties, co-workers, acquaintances, people they connect with easily, and people they struggle to understand. The manner in which native speakers discuss these dynamics is consistently full of subtlety and genuine warmth. Let's begin with a simple scenario describing people with whom you feel genuinely comfortable. Here are some ubiquitous expressions: I feel like I can be myself around them. They're really easy to talk to. We just click. There's a good vibe between us. They get me. Note that these are not formal, clinical sentences. They are, rather, warm, emotionally resonant, and organic. Yes, the phrase "we just click" is arguably one of the most powerful expressions in English. It signifies immediate, effortless compatibility. Naturally, the opposite dynamic also finds expression. We don't really click. Our personalities don't mesh well. The vibe feels off. There's some tension between us. Again, all these contrastive phrases are remarkably common. Correct. And it is important to emphasize a key point. The word vibe has become one of the most frequently used terms in modern English. It serves as an umbrella term, referring to a general feeling, an atmosphere, a person's energy, or a situational mood. Almost anything can possess a vibe. You constantly hear, "It's got a nice vibe," "I'm not loving the vibe here," or "the vibe feels weird today." This usage is highly contemporary and completely natural. Now, let's discuss close friendships. People utilize a variety of resonant phrases to describe their friends. For example, "They're the kind of person you can rely on." "They always show up for me." "We go way back." "They're my go-to person." "We've been through a lot together." The last two are particularly meaningful. A go-to person is the individual you habitually rely on for support, advice, or comfort. "We've been through a lot together" signifies that the relationship possesses shared history and genuine depth. Absolutely. Since relationships are not always smooth sailing, let's introduce the language surrounding challenges and misunderstandings. Native speakers are skilled at softening difficult or potentially painful messages. You'll hear, "There's been some miscommunication." "I think we're not on the same page." "I feel like something's been off lately." "I didn't mean for it to come across that way." "I think we should talk things through." These expressions empower you to address issues directly, without resorting to aggressive or confrontational language. Yes. And one of the most vital relational skills in English-speaking cultures is the ability to communicate disagreement politely and respectfully. People use strategic phrasing such as, "I see where you're coming from," but, "I hear you, but I see it differently." "I get your point, but I don't fully agree." "That's a fair point, but here's my take." These lines expertly allow you to maintain respect and connection while simultaneously upholding your honesty and viewpoint. Furthermore, native speakers constantly utilize "I feel" statements. This is a foundational technique for expressing emotions and observations without placing explicit blame on the other party. Examples include, "I feel unheard," "I feel overwhelmed," "I feel disconnected," "I feel like we're misunderstanding each other." This is perfectly normal, common everyday phrasing, particularly prevalent in the US, Canada, and Australia. Now, let's touch on a lighter subject: meeting new people. Individuals often articulate first impressions using natural, spontaneous language. They seem really genuine. They give off a friendly vibe. They seemed a bit guarded at first. They're easy to be around. They made a really good impression. These are phrases you will encounter repeatedly in casual discourse. Yes. And perhaps one of the most universally accepted expressions is simply, "They're good people." It is basic, yet enormously common, a sincere and warm way to affirm someone's character. Let's progress to something slightly more personal: communicating emotional and informational needs. Native speakers frequently employ phrases such as, "I need a bit more reassurance," "I need clearer communication," "I need you to be straightforward with me," "I need some space to process things." These expressions are used not only in romantic partnerships but also with friends, family, coworkers, and within collaborative group projects. Absolutely. And there is a phrase that every C2 learner must know because of its constant recurrence: "I don't want to make things awkward." This is extremely common when a person needs to initiate a sensitive or difficult conversation, but wishes to minimize tension or discomfort within the relationship. Now, let's explore the language associated with trust and reliability. Positive expressions include, "I trust them completely. They've never let me down. They're someone I can count on. They follow through on what they say. They keep their word." These are indispensable expressions across both personal and professional contexts. Naturally, the opposite sentiments are also conveyed. They're a bit unreliable. They mean well, but they don't follow through. They're inconsistent. They're not the easiest person to work with. I'm not sure I can depend on them. It is worth noting how even these expressions of criticism are delivered gently. English has a pronounced tendency to soften negative feedback. Exactly. Now, let's include one of the most crucial modern phrases: "They respect my boundaries." This is tremendously important when discussing emotional well-being and the establishment of healthy relationships. Let's illustrate this with a natural dialogue. "How's everything going with your new team?" "Pretty good, actually. Everyone's been really supportive." "That's nice to hear." "Yeah. The communication is clear, and people respect each other's boundaries. That makes such a difference." This type of conversation is extremely common in modern workplaces globally. And speaking of the professional environment, let's transition into how people discuss collaboration, teamwork, and professional communication. The language used in the workplace is often far softer, more indirect, and more emotionally aware than non-native speakers often anticipate. We will delve into phrases related to giving and receiving feedback, disagreeing professionally, and navigating complex conversations. Before we make that shift, here is the essential takeaway from this segment to sound authentic in English. You must be capable of discussing relationships, emotions, and connection using soft, subtle, and distinctly human language. This constitutes one of the foundational pillars of C2 level fluency. All right. Next, we step into the dynamic world of workplace communication and the incredibly rich professional vocabulary it offers. Now, let's pivot to a world every adult must skillfully navigate: workplace communication. It is here that native speakers employ some of their most nuanced, polite, indirect, and emotionally intelligent language. This specific area is where language learners frequently misjudge or misinterpret tone, making familiarity with these professional expressions absolutely vital for achieving genuine C2 level fluency. Exactly. The modern workplace thrives on subtle language. People typically avoid speaking with blunt directness, especially when addressing difficulties, disagreements, deadlines, or performance issues. They opt instead for softer phrasing, expressions that foster collaboration, and carefully framed indirect suggestions. Let's start with the simple acts of checking in and confirming mutual understanding. You will frequently hear, "Just to clarify, can I double-check something? Let me make sure I'm understanding you correctly." So, what you're saying is, just to confirm, we're on the same page, right? These phrases are instrumental in preventing confusion and demonstrating professionalism without appearing rigid or demanding. Furthermore, a phrase constantly used in English-speaking workplaces is, "Does that work for you?" This is the standard polite way to inquire whether a proposed plan or schedule is acceptable to the other party. Now, we address the critical skill of giving feedback, particularly when it must be corrective or negative. Native speakers virtually never use blunt statements like, "This is wrong," or "I don't like this." Instead, they phrase criticism as collaborative suggestions. "Have you considered trying?" One thing we might want to adjust is, "It might flow better if we, I think there's room to improve this part. What if we approached it from another angle?" These strategic expressions effectively soften the critique and transform the interaction into a collaborative exercise. Exactly. And when an individual needs to navigate disagreement in a meeting, they are likely to say, "I see your point, but I have a slightly different perspective. I hear what you're saying, though I'm not fully convinced. I'm not sure that's the direction we want to go. I think we might need to rethink this part. I have some concerns about that approach." Phrasing it this way ensures that the disagreement is received as professional input rather than a confrontation. One of my personal favorite workplace expressions is, "Let's circle back to that," which means, "We will return to this topic later," without dismissing it entirely. Another staple is, "Let's table that for now," signifying a temporary pause on the discussion point. These time management phrases are exceedingly common, particularly in business meetings across the US and Canada. Right. Now, let's cover the polite ways people ask for assistance in a professional setting. They might inquire, "Could you give me a hand with this? Do you mind taking a quick look? Would you be able to walk me through this? Can you clarify what you meant by that? I could use a second opinion." These expressions demonstrate both humility and a willingness to collaborate, traits that are highly valued in any professional environment. And when someone seeks to offer their help, you will hear, "Let me know if you need anything. I'm happy to support however I can. I can take care of that if you'd like. Want me to handle this part? Do you want to tag team this?" The phrase, tag team, is very natural and means to collaborate closely on a task. Now, let's move into a slightly heavier topic: managing pressure, deadlines, and the inevitable stress of the workplace. People frequently use phrases to describe their workload, such as, "I'm under a lot of pressure right now," "I'm juggling a lot of deadlines," "I'm feeling stretched pretty thin," "I could use more time on this," "This week has been non-stop." This candid language demonstrates a degree of vulnerability while maintaining professional transparency. Exactly. And when an individual needs to request an extension without giving the impression they are unprepared, they might strategically inquire, "Is there any flexibility with the deadline? I might need a bit more time to give this my best. I want to make sure the quality is there. Could we extend this slightly?" These are exceptionally common negotiations, particularly within remote working models. Now, let's discuss a universal professional experience: meetings. To sound fluent and natural, familiarize yourself with these common expressions. Let's jump right in. Before we wrap up, who wants to kick things off? That brings us to the next point. Any updates on this? And crucially, let's take this offline, which means the matter should be discussed privately later, outside of the current meeting structure. Exactly. A significant aspect of modern workplace culture involves managing emotions in a professional manner. When an individual is frustrated yet striving to remain composed, they may say, "I need a moment to process this. I want to make sure I respond thoughtfully. This has been a challenging situation. I'm trying to stay constructive here." If the goal is to proactively prevent conflict, people will use phrases like, "Let's keep the conversation productive," "Let's focus on solutions," "I don't want this to turn into a bigger issue." Now, let's move to another important element: recognition and appreciation. Professionals don't just critique, they frequently acknowledge strong performance. Common expressions include, "Great job on this," "I really appreciate your work here," "You handled that really well," "Thanks for stepping up," "This wouldn't have happened without you." These statements are vital tools for building trust and cultivating positive professional rapport. Now, let's integrate workplace and personal dynamics, as they often intersect. For instance, if a coworker appears stressed or visibly upset, people will typically respond with compassion. "Hey, are you okay? You seem a bit off today. If you need to talk, I'm here. Take a breather, if you need one. Let me know how I can support you." This type of caring, human language is increasingly prevalent in contemporary professional settings. Exactly. And before we transition to the next major topic, here is a quick, natural workplace-style dialogue to illustrate these points. Did you have a chance to look at the proposal? Yes. I went through it this morning. It looks solid, but there are a couple of areas we might tweak. Okay. What are you thinking? I think the introduction needs a bit more clarity. We can walk through it together if you want. Sounds good. Let's circle back after lunch. This seemingly simple conversation is, in fact, packed with over a dozen high-frequency native expressions. All right, now let's transition into a topic that is equally rich and crucially important: how native speakers discuss self-improvement, goals, habits, and personal growth. This subject constitutes a massive component of modern English, encompassing the specific language people deploy when actively seeking to better themselves. We will dive into that next. So, we move now to another profoundly universal theme: self-improvement, personal growth, and the everyday vocabulary people use when striving to become better versions of themselves. This is one of the most rewarding and relatable areas of natural English precisely because everyone without exception is actively working on something. Exactly. The discourse surrounding self-improvement among native speakers is neither dramatic nor overtly philosophical. It is typically casual, honest, occasionally humorous, and sometimes deeply vulnerable. It is the language overheard in coffee shops, gym locker rooms, during late-night talks, or while taking a walk with a friend. Let's begin with some exceedingly common expressions employed when people are consciously trying to cultivate better habits. I'm trying to get my life together. I'm working on being more consistent. I'm trying to break some old habits. I'm slowly getting into a better routine. It's a work in progress. That final phrase, "it's a work in progress," might be one of the most widely used expressions in contemporary English. People apply it to everything: their health, their long-term goals, creative projects, mindset, or self-care regimen. It's gentle, realistic, and profoundly human. Exactly. And speaking of self-care, let's integrate the language focused on tending to one's physical, mental, and emotional health. You will frequently encounter expressions such as, "I'm learning to take things slower," "I'm trying to be kinder to myself," "I'm working on setting healthier boundaries," "I'm focusing on what matters," "I'm trying not to put too much pressure on myself." These are more than mere words. They embody modern communication trends. English-speaking cultures increasingly prioritize mental health and self-awareness, and the language naturally reflects this cultural shift. Correct. And when someone acknowledges a temporary setback, they might say, "I fell out of my routine. I've been slipping a little bit. I lost momentum. I'm trying to get back on track. I got overwhelmed and hit pause for a while." These phrases communicate honesty without the burden of shame, a pervasive and important theme in contemporary English. Now, let's talk about motivation, as this is something people love discussing and sometimes making light of through humor. For instance, you might overhear someone say, "I am incredibly motivated until I suddenly lose it." We experience cycles and phases. One day, we might be absolutely excelling, killing it, and the next, we are just managing to cope, barely holding it together. Many of us are great at initiating projects but struggle with the follow-through. We occasionally require external encouragement or a gentle nudge to keep moving. This conversational style reflects authentic real-life struggles, far removed from the overly polished, idealized motivational quotes often found on social media. People frequently use self-deprecating humor as a strategy to mitigate the inherent difficulty and psychological weight of self-improvement efforts. Common phrases include, "I'm trying to get my act together," focusing on one small step at a time. "I'm only doing the bare minimum right now, but crucially, I am still engaged and doing something. I started with huge, ambitious plans, but then reality set in and vetoed them. I genuinely want to try, but honestly, my bed is an incredibly persuasive force." While these expressions are often playful, they effectively communicate very real, universal struggles. Exactly. Moving beyond surface-level talk, let's consider a deeper theme: how people discuss personal identity and long-term growth. You will frequently hear expressions like, "I'm trying to figure out exactly who I want to be," "I'm in the process of learning what truly matters to me," "I'm actively working to outgrow some old, unproductive patterns," "I'm focusing on becoming a more patient person," "I'm attempting to develop better, more sustainable habits." These statements are highly vulnerable and reflective, demonstrating a significant level of emotional maturity. which is a key characteristic of advanced English communication. Another vital theme is the quest for balance. People commonly discuss their efforts to juggle work responsibilities, physical health, relationships, necessary rest, high productivity demands, personal hobbies, and everything else in their lives. Thus, you will hear I'm actively trying to find a healthier, more sustainable balance. I have a tendency to overcommit myself, and I am working hard to address that. I'm learning the importance of not burning myself out completely. I'm making an effort to slow down and be more present in the moment. I genuinely need to pace myself better in the future. These expressions signify both a deep self-awareness and a clear intention for change. Let's introduce a brief dialogue to illustrate this naturally. How's your new routine going? Pretty well, actually. But I'm still trying to find my rhythm. Yeah. It definitely takes time to settle in. Exactly. I'm learning to take things just one step at a time. This natural pace of conversation is completely authentic. It's precisely how real people communicate. Absolutely. And another interesting facet of self-improvement language emerges when people discuss new habits they intend to adopt. You might hear, "I've been meaning to start reading more regularly. I'm trying to get back into the habit of journaling. I really want to become a more organized person. I've seriously been thinking about starting therapy sessions. I'm working on becoming more disciplined in my daily life." Once again, these are not formal statements. They represent everyday conversational patterns. And then there is the opposite, acknowledging the habits they urgently need to eliminate or break. You'll frequently hear, "I'm trying to cut back significantly on my screen time. I absolutely need to stop procrastinating so much. I've been trying to stop the cycle of overthinking. I'm working on not being so excessively hard on myself. I'm trying to avoid burning out again, like I did before." These expressions clearly reflect internal challenges and self-management efforts. Now, let's discuss one of the most significant themes in personal growth discourse: motivation versus discipline. English speakers discuss this constantly, and they often conclude, motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. You simply can't rely on motivation alone. It's entirely about building effective systems. Discipline is what shows up when motivation fails. I'm trying to create habits that feel inherently sustainable. Notice the language used is gentle and supportive, rather than strict or punitive. Yes. And then there is the topic of accountability, another highly common point of discussion. People frequently say things like, "I need someone to hold me accountable for my goals. Please tell me to stick to my plan when I waver. I perform much better when I check in with a partner or mentor. I find that I work more effectively with external structure." These phrases are not confined merely to workplace settings. They are profoundly personal. Now, let's introduce another highly relevant area dealing with setbacks. Because no one achieves growth without inevitably experiencing setbacks, moments of self-doubt, and deep frustration. And the language surrounding this is incredibly versatile and useful. Native speakers often express this by saying, "I hit a bit of a rough patch recently. I completely lost my sense of motivation. I had a setback, but I'm actively bouncing back now. I slipped up on my plan, but I am absolutely not giving up. I'm trying not to be too self-critical or hard on myself." These expressions are emotionally honest and used ubiquitously. Exactly. And when someone successfully derives a lesson from a difficult experience, they might say, "That experience taught me a tremendous amount. It really put things into perspective for me. It completely made me rethink several aspects of my life." Ultimately, it helped me grow as a person. It was a much-needed wake-up call. The concept of perspective is a colossal theme in natural English conversation. Let's conclude this segment with one more natural dialogue. How's your self-improvement journey going lately? Honestly, it's going slowly, but I am definitely making tangible progress. That's genuinely all that matters. Yeah, I'm learning to trust the process. Trust the process is an incredibly common idiom. It signifies the belief that meaningful growth takes time and should not be rushed. All right, coming up next, we're going to explore another major topic in advanced English communication: how people talk about expectations, pressure, ambition, and purpose. This is the point where language becomes deep, inherently emotional, reflective, and extraordinarily useful for achieving a truly native sound. All right, let's transition into something that every adult in every culture, every job, and every stage of life deals with: constantly expectations, pressure, ambition, and purpose. These overarching themes fundamentally shape how people talk about their lives, their major choices, their goals, and their trajectory toward the future. And the language native speakers employ around these abstract ideas is immensely rich, deeply nuanced, and powerfully emotionally layered. Exactly. And what is crucial to understand is that native speakers rarely discuss ambition in a predictable, straightforward, textbook manner. They typically avoid phrases like, "My objective is to achieve my long-term strategic goals." Instead, the language is softer, far more personal, and reflective. You will hear expressions like, "I'm trying hard to figure out what I truly want." "I'm still actively exploring all my options." "I'm honestly not sure what my next major step should be." "I'm seriously considering switching things up soon." "I want to feel authentically excited about the work I'm doing." These phrases reveal a mixture of genuine uncertainty, alongside intellectual openness and curiosity. Right, and when people talk about pressure, the language often becomes notably more metaphorical. Phrases include, "I feel like there's a heavy weight on my shoulders." "I'm carrying a lot of responsibility right now." "I'm holding myself up to an extremely high standard." "I'm feeling pulled intensely in 3 different directions." "I'm trying desperately to manage everyone's expectations." These are very common, profoundly human expressions of emotional and psychological weight. And notice how indirect this language is. Native speakers frequently soften heavy topics. Instead of stating, "I am stressed because of external expectations," they will typically phrase it as, "It's been a little overwhelming lately. I've definitely had a lot on my plate recently. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself too quickly. I'm feeling the pressure building up a bit." All of these sound highly natural, relatable, and demonstrate emotional awareness. Exactly. Now, let's discuss ambition, because individuals approach it very differently. Some are intensely goal-driven, others maintain a more relaxed approach, and many fall somewhere in between those extremes. Here is how native speakers express ambition in a genuinely natural, everyday way. "I've definitely got some big plans. I'm aiming higher than I have before. I know deep down I'm capable of achieving more. I want to challenge myself significantly. I feel ready for the next chapter in my life." And sometimes, ambition is expressed quite quietly and introspectively. "I want a life that feels genuinely meaningful. I want to be able to do work I'm truly proud of. I want to feel completely fulfilled by my choices." These phrases reveal profound depth, without sounding overly dramatic or aggressive. Right, and when someone's expectations for themselves become unrealistically high, You'll frequently hear reflective statements like, "I'm being far too hard on myself. I'm setting the bar way too high for anyone. I need to learn to be much more realistic. I'm expecting too much of myself too quickly." These expressions reflect significant self-awareness and a focus on personal growth. Now, let's integrate the concept of purpose, because in English-speaking cultures, people talk about purpose constantly, not just in spiritual or philosophical terms, but in day-to-day conversations. You'll hear things like, "I want to do something that truly matters." "I'm trying to find what feels instinctively right for me." "I'm still actively trying to figure out my deeper purpose." "I want to feel like I'm moving consistently in the right direction." "I want to contribute to something bigger than just myself." Again, this is not formal or academic. It is simply real conversation. Exactly. Now, let's connect this vital concept to something every listener can relate to: the unsettling feeling of not knowing if you are making the right decision. Native speakers address this with phrases like, "I'm seriously second-guessing myself lately." "I'm not sure if I'm entirely on the right track." "I'm questioning a lot of things these days." "I'm rethinking my priorities from the ground up." "I'm wondering if I'm heading in the correct direction." This language expresses doubt in a soft, relatable manner. And here is another huge one: "I don't want to settle." This powerful phrase means the person is refusing to accept a job, a relationship, or a lifestyle that feels fundamentally wrong or unsatisfying. Exactly. And the linguistic opposite is, "I'm learning to be okay with where I am," meaning the person is working on accepting and appreciating their current situation. Now let's address external expectations: what other people, such as family, society, culture, or your workplace, expect from you. People frequently say, "There's a lot of social pressure to succeed. I feel like everyone expects me to have everything already figured out. I'm trying hard not to live my life just for other people. Everyone seems to have opinions about what I should be doing. I'm trying to block out the noise." To block out the noise means deliberately ignoring opinions or influences that are not helpful. And here is a phrase you will hear constantly. At the end of the day, this phrase means, "when you consider what truly matters," and is often followed by, "at the end of the day, I just want to be happy. At the end of the day, it's ultimately my decision. At the end of the day, I'm the one living this life." Extremely natural, extremely common. Let's bring in a small, natural conversation. Do you ever feel like you should be further along in life than you are? All the time? Yeah, same here. But I'm trying to constantly remind myself that everyone moves at their own pace. Exactly. There is no predetermined timeline we have to rigidly follow. This type of heartfelt conversation happens everywhere. Cafes, offices, late-night talks, long walks with friends, right? And speaking of pace, here is another group of expressions native speakers use constantly when discussing the timing of their lives. "I'm definitely not in a rush. I'm taking things slow and deliberate. I'll get there when I get there. I'm moving strictly at my own pace. Things will eventually fall into place." To fall into place is a common idiom, meaning things will work out naturally and eventually. Exactly. Now, let's shift slightly into the fear of failure, because this is one of the biggest emotional themes in English-speaking cultures. People confess, "I'm afraid of messing things up completely. I genuinely don't want to disappoint anyone. I'm scared of making the wrong choice. I don't want to waste any more time. I'm worried I'm not fundamentally good enough." And when someone encourages another person, they might say, "You're doing better than you realize. Give yourself some credit for your efforts." You're exactly where you need to be right now. You'll definitely figure it out. You've got this. These phrases are incredibly common in supportive conversations. And let's also discuss purpose versus expectation, because that is where a lot of charged emotional language resides. People say, I don't want to live my life on autopilot. I want a life that feels deeply intentional. I don't want to chase things that ultimately won't fulfill me. I'm trying to create a life that feels genuinely meaningful. I want to live in a way that actually feels true to me. All of these reflect a modern, personal, introspective way of speaking. Before we wrap up this complex section, here's another natural mini dialogue. How are you doing with everything going on? Honestly, a little lost. But I'm trying to trust that things will make sense eventually. I totally get that. Just take it one step at a time. Yeah. I'm actively working on that mindset. This is exactly how native speakers talk: soft, honest, supportive, and real. All right, next we're moving into something just as rich and universal. How people talk about memories, nostalgia, regrets, and the lessons they have learned. This is where English becomes deeply emotional and beautifully expressive. Perfect for advanced listening practice. Now, let's dive into a topic that many people don't expect to be so rich in natural English: memories, nostalgia, regrets, and the crucial lessons we take from the past. This is an area where native speakers use incredibly expressive, emotional, and nuanced language. Sometimes they speak directly, sometimes through humor, sometimes gently, and sometimes very openly. Exactly. Because when people discuss their past, whether it involves childhood memories, old friendships, monumental decisions, or mistakes they have made, they naturally shift into a softer, more reflective style of English. And this is one of the most beautiful areas for C2 learners to master, because it clearly demonstrates depth and emotional maturity. Let's start with nostalgia, a powerful feeling that native speakers talk about all the time. You'll hear expressions like, "That really takes me back. That immediately brings back so many memories. I haven't thought about that particular event in ages. It genuinely feels like a lifetime ago now. Ah, those were definitely simpler times." These expressions carry warmth, deep reflection, and sentimentality. Right. And when someone remembers a specific moment vividly, they might say, "I can still picture it perfectly, like it was yesterday. I remember that so clearly, every detail. That precise moment is still incredibly vivid in my mind." These descriptive phrases are extremely common when people are engaging in personal storytelling. Now, let's bring in childhood and the experience of growing up, because this is one of the most frequent topics for nostalgic conversations. People say things like, "I used to spend hours doing that one activity. That was absolutely my favorite thing to do when I was a kid. I really miss how completely carefree life felt back then. We didn't even realize how good we truly had it. I wish I could go back and relive that time, just for a single day." These lines convey emotional depth, but remain casual and conversational. Exactly. And nostalgia isn't always warm and fuzzy. Sometimes, it's distinctly bittersweet. Phrases include, "It's funny how much things change. Life felt so profoundly different back then. I didn't truly appreciate that moment at the time. I didn't realize how much I'd come to miss those specific moments. I wish I had slowed down and simply enjoyed it more." These types of reflections appear constantly in movies, podcasts, close relationships, and everyday discussions. Now, let's shift into regret. Not dramatic, life-altering regret, but the everyday kind that everyone experiences. Native speakers often soften expressions of regret by using gentle language. If I'm being completely honest, I wish I had handled that situation differently. I really should have spoken up when I had the chance. I realize now that I held myself back unnecessarily. I simply didn't know any better at that particular time. I regrettably let fear get in the way of what I wanted. Notice how none of these statements are harsh or self-punishing. They are purely reflective. Exactly. And sometimes regret is expressed deftly with humor. I made some truly questionable decisions back then. I was an absolute mess back in those days. Let's just say I learned that lesson the very hard way. These expressions make regret feel relatable rather than intensely heavy. And here's one of the most universal lines in reflective English I wish I could have told my younger self. People complete this sentence with things like, to be more confident, to worry a lot less, to simply enjoy the moment, that everything would ultimately work out, or to stop caring so much about what others think. These reflective ideas appear ubiquitously across English-speaking culture. Now, let's talk about lessons learned, because English has an entire rich category of natural expressions specifically for this. You'll hear, it taught me a significant amount. It genuinely made me stronger as a person. It fundamentally changed me. It completely opened my eyes to reality. It shaped who I am today. It gave me valuable perspective. These expressions demonstrate emotional growth and internalization. And then, there are phrases used when someone reflects on a moment of difficulty. At the time, I couldn't see the bigger picture. I didn't fully understand what that situation meant for me yet. It took me a considerable while to process the whole thing. I can see the situation much more clearly now. I actually needed that difficult experience more than I realized. These expressions convey maturity and deep, thoughtful contemplation. Exactly. And a very common, profound reflection is, if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be where I am today. This powerful idea appears everywhere in interviews, public speeches, and conversations with close friends. Now, let's touch upon relationships from the past, because the way native speakers discuss old friendships or former partners is incredibly natural. We unfortunately drifted apart. We lost touch over the years. We ultimately went our separate ways. We're on good terms, but we're definitely not close anymore. We're not in each other's lives the way we used to be. These phrases gently describe distance without adding unnecessary drama. Right, and people also talk about reconnection. We reconnected recently, and it was great. It was so nice catching up after all that time. It genuinely felt like no time had passed at all. We picked up right where we left off. These expressions convey immediate warmth and familiarity. Another very common thematic reflection is, I've changed a lot since then, or I'm not the same person I used to be. People often use these lines when reflecting on growth, past mistakes, or major life transitions. Now, let's bring in a mini dialogue that feels completely natural. Do you ever think about the past and wonder how dramatically different things could have been? All the time. But then I have to remind myself that everything, good and bad, ultimately led me to where I am now. Yeah, I guess that's true. Honestly, I'm grateful for the lessons, even the hard ones. This tone, reflective, soft, calm, and grounded, is extremely prevalent in sophisticated English communication. Exactly. And speaking of gratitude, let's introduce some language native speakers use when expressing appreciation for the past or for the things that shaped them. I'm incredibly grateful for that entire chapter of my life. I'm thankful for the people who supported me through it. I didn't realize it then, but I clearly see the value now. That experience specifically taught me resilience. I am definitely a better person because of it. Now, let's explore nostalgia through sensory memory, something English speakers often do. They connect memories to smells, sounds, weather, or small sensory details. The smell of rain immediately reminds me of being home. A certain song can instantly transport me back in time. The specific sound of summer nights brings back everything. That particular place carries so many deep memories. This language is emotional, poetic, and entirely natural. And you'll also hear expressions like, "That chapter of my life still feels somewhat unfinished. I still think about what could have been achieved." Some memories simply stay with you forever. Some people just leave an indelible mark. These lines show emotional imprint, how the past stays actively alive in the present moment. Now, let's talk about the important concept of moving on. Because this is another key theme. I've made peace with it. I've completely let it go. I've grown past that stage. I'm officially closing that chapter. I'm ready for a fresh start. These expressions communicate intentional closure. Before we finish this section, here's one more natural dialogue. Do you ever seriously regret anything from your past? Of course, but I genuinely try not to dwell on it. How do you manage that? I try to focus purely on what I learned, instead of what I felt I lost. That viewpoint is extremely native, calm, thoughtful, and grounded. All right. Next, we're entering another powerful area of advanced English. How people talk about dreams, imagination, creativity, inspiration, and the future. This is where English becomes visionary, expressive, hopeful, and absolutely beautiful for C2 learners to master. Now, let's move into a topic that brings out some of the most expressive, imaginative, and uplifting language in English: dreams, creativity, imagination, inspiration, and the future. This is where native speakers employ hopeful, visionary, forward-looking phrases, the kind of language that helps you not only sound authentic, but also inspire others, connect emotionally, and articulate the person you are actively becoming. Exactly. And one of the most beautiful aspects of the English language is how people discuss their dreams, not just tactical goals or ambitions, but the things that spark excitement, curiosity, or a sense of possibility deep inside them. Let's begin with some extremely common phrases native speakers use when talking about these aspirations. I've always dreamed of doing that one thing. One day, I would genuinely love to make that happen. It's something I've been thinking about for years now. I can clearly picture myself doing that someday. I'm not there yet, but I'm actively working toward it. These phrases feel hopeful, yet remain grounded. They are neither overly dramatic nor unrealistic. Right. And you'll also hear plenty of expressions rooted in imagination and curiosity, such as, "Sometimes I wonder what my life would realistically look like if I just tried that." I love imagining all the different possibilities. It's fun to think about where life might unexpectedly take me. I'm curious to see exactly what the future holds. I like exploring new ideas just to see what sticks. That last one, "see what sticks," is a very common idiom meaning trying things out to discover what works effectively. Exactly. Now, let's move into creativity, because creativity manifests everywhere at work, in hobbies, in problem solving, in storytelling, and the language surrounding it is incredibly rich. People say things like, "I'm feeling tremendously inspired lately." "I'm absolutely in a creative mood today." "I hit a sudden creative block." I'm trying hard to get my creative energy back up. I had a sudden spark of inspiration. All of these are extremely natural and conversational. And when people talk about initiating something new, a project, a hobby, a professional passion, you'll hear I've been wanting to try something totally different. I'm experimenting with a bunch of new ideas. I'm intentionally stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm just playing around with some early concepts. I'm exploring an entirely new direction. Those expressions demonstrate both curiosity and personal courage, right? And one of the most common modern phrases is, I'm trying to tap into my creativity, which means accessing or reconnecting with your creative side. Now, let's bring in future-oriented language, because this is one of the areas where advanced English becomes incredibly expressive. People say, I'm really excited for what's ahead. I feel incredibly hopeful about the future. I genuinely feel like good things are coming my way. I'm ready for a brand new chapter. I'm open to whatever life decides to bring. These are optimistic, reflective, and very common sentiments in English-speaking cultures. And then there is the language of vision, imagining a greater future for oneself. You'll hear, I clearly see myself growing in that professional direction. I want to build something that feels truly meaningful. I have a much bigger picture in mind now. I'm dreaming bigger these days than I used to. I'm planning ahead strategically, but trying to stay flexible. This combination of hopeful aspiration and realism is extremely characteristic of natural, sophisticated English. Let's bring in a natural mini dialogue to illustrate this conversational flow. So, what's next for you? Any big dreams on the horizon? Honestly, yeah. I've been seriously thinking about starting my own thing. Really? That's incredibly exciting. Yeah, I'm still figuring out the exact details, but I feel like it's absolutely the right direction for me. That's awesome. You should totally go for it. Conversations like this happen everywhere. Coffee shops, late-night calls, walking home after dinner. Now, let's explore the necessary presence of fear and doubt surrounding dreams, because this is just as important. People often say I want to try it, but I'm terrified. What if I'm simply not good enough? I don't know if I actually have what it takes to succeed. It's very risky, but it intrinsically feels right. I'm afraid of failing, but I'm far more afraid of not even trying. That last line is incredibly common in inspirational and motivational conversations. Exactly. And when people encourage each other to overcome this fear, the language naturally becomes gentle, supportive, and hopeful. You never truly know what could happen unless you try. You owe it to yourself to make the effort. You are far more capable than you think you are. You might actually surprise yourself. The very first step is always the hardest part. These expressions lift people up and actively build courage. Now, let's discuss taking action. Because dreams remain dreams, unless you start moving toward them. Native speakers use expressions like I'm taking small, manageable steps. I've started putting things into motion. I'm doing what I can right now with the resources I have. I'm slowly building momentum. I'm definitely making progress, even if it feels agonizingly slow. These statements are both practical and optimistic. And here's a huge, essential one. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm significantly closer than I was before. This is one of the most widely used self-growth lines in English. Exactly. Now, let's go deeper into the emotional landscape we navigate. We often encounter feelings of being stuck, a strong desire for change, or a deep craving for something radically new. People commonly articulate this state by saying things like, I feel like I'm outgrowing my old life. They might state directly, I'm craving change. I need something different. Or confess, I feel stuck, but I'm determined to move forward. I'm ready for something new. These are extremely common and natural expressions that signal a personal transition is underway. And then we shift to the language of possibility, which arguably contains some of the most genuinely hopeful English you will ever hear. It revolves around questions of potential. What if it actually works out? What if this is the start of something great? What if I'm meant for more? What if I surprise myself? What if everything goes right? These potent questions serve to unlock both our imagination and our courage. Now, let's integrate another natural and deeply relatable mini dialogue into the mix. You ever feel like you're meant to do something bigger all the time? What stops you? Mostly fear and overthinking. That makes sense, but maybe the fear means it matters. Yeah, maybe it's worth trying. This exchange is incredibly authentic. The tone, the phrasing, the subtle emotional nuance all ring true. Exactly. And before we transition into the final section of this episode, we need to briefly touch upon one more profoundly important theme: hope. Because hope, even when it is small, quiet, or tentative, is a powerful and essential component of natural English communication. People often convey this optimism by saying, I have a good feeling about this. I'm trying to stay hopeful. I think things will fall into place. I'm keeping an open mind. I believe something good is coming. These are not dramatic, life-altering pronouncements. They are simply everyday expressions of resilience and cautious optimism. And here is a final reflective thought before we move to the last chapter of our discussion. I'm learning that sometimes you don't need to have the whole path figured out. You just need to take the next step. This single line is profoundly native, deeply human, and undeniably real. Alright, coming up next is the final, crucial section of the podcast where we expertly bring everything we've discussed together and conclude with language focused on grounding, emotional connection, reflection, and long-form, natural conversation. We are almost there. So, we are coming toward the close of this long, reflective journey. But before we fully wrap up, let's take a moment to integrate all the concepts. We have navigated discussions on routines, stress, boundaries, emotions, relationships, workplace language, self-improvement, ambition, nostalgia, dreams, and the future. And the truly beautiful aspect is that all of these diverse topics share one crucial thing in common. They reveal exactly how real people speak in real life. Exactly. And the more you actively listen to and absorb these natural rhythms, the more fluent you inevitably become, not just in terms of sheer vocabulary, but crucially, in tone, emotional nuance, confident expression, and overall communicative flow. But before we officially sign off, let's move into one last vital area of real-life conversation: how native speakers articulate the process of grounding themselves, finding inner peace, and maintaining a centered state. This is an area rich with soft, calming, and highly authentic language that constantly surfaces in everyday interactions. Let's begin with some of the most natural expressions people employ when they are making an effort to stay grounded. I'm trying to stay present. I'm focusing on the little things. I'm learning to slow down. I'm taking things as they come. I'm trying not to get caught up in the chaos. These simple yet profound expressions clearly demonstrate emotional awareness and a healthy perspective. Wouldn't you agree? And when people talk about the need for finding mental clarity, you will invariably hear phrases like, I need some quiet time to think. I'm trying to clear my head. I need to step back and look at the bigger picture. I'm figuring things out one step at a time. I'm trying to reconnect with myself. These particular phrases appear constantly in sincere conversations concerning life balance and emotional management. Exactly. And let's not overlook the language people use when they realize they have been emotionally or mentally overburdened. I need to let go of some things. I'm releasing what I can't control. I'm trying to lighten my load. I'm learning to pick my battles. I'm choosing peace. That last statement, I'm choosing peace, has become an extremely prevalent and powerful expression in modern English usage. Now, let's introduce a natural mini dialogue that perfectly captures this specific type of emotional grounding. How have you been feeling lately? A bit overwhelmed, honestly. But I'm actively trying to slow down and breathe. Yeah, I completely get that. Life can pile up fast. Exactly. I'm learning to take things day by day. It genuinely helps. It really does. Be gentle with yourself. This compassionate kind of conversation happens every single day between close friends, siblings, co-workers, anyone who genuinely cares about another person. Now, let's bring everything full circle by revisiting a point we made right at the very beginning of the episode. The journey from great English to truly effortless English. That final stretch of fluency, that crucial last 10%, does not emerge from painstakingly studying advanced grammar rules or simply memorizing overly complex vocabulary. It comes from deeply absorbing natural conversational patterns. The subtle ways people soften their language, the techniques they use to express emotions indirectly, the way tone alters meaning, how simple phrases can carry deep, profound feelings, and the way that humor, hesitation, and small details make conversations feel unequivocally real. Exactly. And that is precisely why listening to long-form, natural-style conversation like this is so immensely valuable. It meticulously trains your ear to recognize not just the content what is said but the delivery how it's said. And that is the true magic of advanced English. You start to intuitively pick up on the rhythm. You begin to catch the subtle emotional shifts. You start to notice the emotional color residing beneath the words, and eventually, without needing to force anything, you naturally start sounding more authentic yourself. Right. And before we officially close out this discussion, let's briefly touch upon the theme of human connection. Because no matter what specific language you are learning, every conversation, every thoughtful expression, and every nuance ultimately circles back to connection. People say, "I appreciate you being here. It means a lot to me. I'm grateful for this conversation. Thanks for listening. I'm glad we talked." These are the kinds of simple, yet deeply human, sentences that carry true emotional weight, and you will hear them everywhere, because their sentiment is universal. Exactly. And speaking of gratitude, let's model a final, natural exchange to bring this entire episode to a graceful close. Hey, this was really nice. I enjoyed talking through all of this. Me, too. It felt deeply grounding, like taking a true deep breath. Yeah. Conversations like this genuinely remind me what really matters. Same here. Thanks for showing up. Always soft, beautifully simple, profoundly human, and perfectly natural. Now it's time to wrap things up. To everyone listening, thank you so much for spending this valuable time with us. Thank you for showing up for your English progress. Thank you for investing in yourself, your personal growth, and your ultimate fluency. And please remember this, your progress is absolutely real, even if you don't always perceive it in the moment. Every single minute you spend listening, absorbing, repeating, and internalizing moves you substantially forward. Fluency isn't just something you achieve.